Good evening, Poe fans, and welcome back to Review Morgue. And
Dun, dun, dun.
Jeanie, what movie are we going to talk about tonight?
Well, we're going to delve into another murder mystery. And instead of it murders on the Rue Morgue, it's Phantom of the Rue Morgue. Dun, dun,
Yes, right
dun.
behind my head is one of the movie posters.
Exactly. And the interesting thing is it doesn't, this one plays more to more suspenseful, and it doesn't give you just, murders.
It's very true. Yes, and it there are lots of nuggets in here
Hmm.
that definitely pull out of Poe's story. And
Yeah.
so that I'm going to just right off the bat say that's one of the things that I liked.
Yeah, I will say, just like I said from our last review, is that as we start getting more into like the newer age, I guess we can call, considering we started from the silent to
Right.
now
Yes.
now we're into the color and all that kind of stuff. As we're getting more into the more popular 50s, we're seeing more adaptations. They're actually sticking closer to a Poe story.
Yes. It's not Pinot, Poe in name only.
Exactly. It's actually giving us some nuggets, as you said,
Hmm.
of the Poe that we can
Yes.
sink our teeth into.
Yes, and this particular picture, like Jeannie said, we're in the 1950s era. This was 1954. Had some bigger named actors. I mean, we had a couple in some of the previous ones we've looked at. The director was Roy Del Ruth, and he had directed previous movies. It happened on Fifth Avenue. That was a pretty big film.
Mhm.
Let's see, Folies Bergère. He did that
Oh,
one. Ziegfeld Follies, The Desert Song, Why Must I Die?
ooh, I don't know.
And later on, after this, The Alligator People. So he also did some B movie work from, the 50s genre as well.
Oh yeah, because that's when we start getting into the world of like the creature from the Black Lagoon
Yep.
and
Yes.
the
It came
Blob
from
and the 50s.
beneath.
Yeah,
Yes.
the attack of the killer tomatoes and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Exactly. And this was a Warner Brothers produced movie. And
That kind
so
of
a
makes
lot of
sense.
the ones we've been watching have been Universal. So we're taking a little bit of a uh,
Side Street.
yes, I was going to say detour. Side street's a good way to look at it,
Hmm.
especially how they're placed in Hollywood.
Yeah. And
So,
considering we're talking about Rue Morgue, we are talking about streets, so it's a side street.
oh yes. And so, interestingly enough, the actor who played Dupine is not the one that got top billing, which I thought
Mm-mm.
was very interesting. However, he is decently known actor. But the head, like who got top billing, was Carl Malden, was Dr. Murray, and he was a doctor. He also taught classes. He was an expert on zoology, I guess would be the best way to say it.
Yeah.
But you may know Carl Malden from A Streetcar Named Desire. He was in On the Waterfront, Patton. those are probably some of his biggest movies. And then he also did the TV show Streets of San Francisco.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, he's definitely more well known, especially just in his face.
yes.
So
And
that would be why they would put him top billing.
absolutely. And then I think when we were kids, didn't he do American Express commercials?
I think so, yes.
Yes, that's what
Because
I really remember him from that.
yeah, because I remember as I was well, I noticed as I was watching, I was like, dude, why does he keep seeming so familiar to me? I was
Oh yeah.
like, yeah,
Yeah.
wait a minute, why? So that would probably be it,
Oh yes. And so,
commercials, because commercials were always geared toward children. So that was
oh
kind of
yeah.
creepy.
Yeah. Then our next build person was the actor Claude Dauphine, and he played Inspector Bonnard. And really and truly, like Jeannie and I were talking about this before we started recording, he was one of the few actors, obviously he is French. He actually had a French accent through this,
Mhm.
and to me, his detective playing was very Dupin-like from Poe's stories. I don't know if Jeannie, if that's what you thought or not.
I think they tried to make it like that,
Yeah.
except for, because that was one of the things that got me when they started introducing his character. They
Hmm.
kept giving him like movements and
Yeah.
different types of things that kind of reminded you of Dupin from previous time.
Hmm. Hmm.
But as later on, as it went, they started getting irritated. It was becoming an irritant to me
Okay, I can see
because
that.
he got way off course,
Yeah.
because it's like they turned him into like Lassard from Sherlock Holmes. They tried to make him out to be an idiot, in my
Yes.
opinion, and
Yes.
not for the reasons they did with Lassard,
Yeah.
but I mean, he went from being like this central focus that he was directing it and he was, using his investigative skills, and
Hmm.
he was portraying the Dupin character of Poe very well, as if
Yeah.
he was the epitome, the epic
Active.
detective.
Yeah.
But then it kind of waylaid toward the end, and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
why did we lock that down?
So, previous work that he did was April in Paris and Barbarella, which actually is 1968. So not way after, but a little bit after. So he's got some well-known work. The next build person was Patricia Medina, who played Jeanette, who was the love interest for Dupin. And looking at what she's done, she was in the 1948 version of Three Musketeers.
Mhm.
Let's see. She did some TV work. In some of these movies I'm not as familiar with, and she did a lot of TV work. So she's actually not as well known. Oh, she also did Snow White and the Three Stooges
Oh
in
yeah.
1961. And
Now I think what were some of the TV shows that are listed for her?
she Man from Uncle, Alfred
Yeah.
Hitchcock Hour, let's see, did I mention Mannix?
Hmm.
Something called let's see, hold on. The Smothers Brothers Show,
Yes.
Burke's Law, where it looks like she may have just, been on an episode or so. That's just to name a few.
Yeah.
That's just to name a few.
Yeah. She was one that every time I saw her, I was like, I've seen her in so many
Yes,
things, and I think she may have actually been in an episode of Perry Mason.
probably. I didn't get that far in the
Yeah,
list,
and some
but
other
yeah,
things. So yeah,
she
if she was
reminded me
more
of,
of a TV, yeah.
yeah,
So she definitely fit more the TV model.
exactly.
persona.
Yeah. And then Professor Paul Dupine was played by Steve Forrest, and he has been in, let's see, he went on to do The Longest Day, Mommy Dearest, Spies Like Us, let's see, SWAT. Let's
Hmm.
see. He did some TV work as well. He was on Murder, She Wrote.
Oh yes.
Let's see.
I know the first time I saw him, I'm like, good Lord, is Errol Flynn in this?
He does look a lot like him. I totally agree.
Well, that's just like Moray. Every time I saw him, the only thing I could think of is like, it's Gene Hackman.
Yeah.
Because he looks like Gene Hackman. I'm like, it's Errol Flynn, it's Gene Hackman, but I'm like,
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know. I think a lot of it had to do with the cosmetic choices that they made for the movie that made
Hmm.
them look like those characters.
Oh, absolutely. So the only other character, I mean, there were this was a heavy filled bit part,
Hmm.
character filled movie, I would say, because we had several people get killed and we had lots of the gendarme. And so, but the one character I also want to mention that we thought was really, I didn't realize this, who it was until Jeannie said something to me. But Jeannie, who was that character that had a small part that you were like, did you not know that was who it was?
Yes, that would be Merv Griffith.
Yes.
Merv Griffith. He
No,
was in
Merv.
there, and I was like, my goodness, am I seeing things? No.
Yes. So
But yeah,
he
he played a
played,
bit part, and
yep,
it was uh he played one of the Dupine's
students.
students.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Who was
And
engaged to a lady that, do we want to spoil?
well, let's just say she became a victim. Let's just say
Yes.
a victim.
All right, yeah, that sounds good. But so, and for those of you who are maybe in a younger generation have not heard of Merv Griffin, he was a huge talk show host back in
Mhm.
the, I guess, 70s. Was he in the 60s as well?
I think from what I can remember, he started like late 60s. I think 68 was when
Okay.
he started doing game shows. And
Yeah.
then he started in Jeopardy. Jeopardy was his big one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because he was the main producer of, and then he got into, producing game shows and different shows, and then he got from in front of the camera to behind the camera, and then started doing all these game shows, which that's what he was most known for. Now he also was a writer, so he did a
Yes.
lot of the writing for Jeopardy
Yeah.
and producing.
And the Merv
Oh,
Griffin show says 62 to 86.
okay, so I knew it was in the 60s, but I can't remember.
Yeah.
I couldn't
And
remember exactly.
yeah, if I remember correctly, I think, wasn't he one of the first talk show hosts?
Yes, I think no, Red Skeleton. I think
Okay.
Red Skeleton and
But he was
Jack
early.
Benny, yeah, and Ed Sullivan were the first. Those were like the early.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking
I
about
think he was,
daytime talk show host.
oh yeah, I think he was the precursor to the Phil Donahue world.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So anyway, so we wanted to just share that out. And so now let's get into the plot.
The plot thickens.
Yes.
Dun, dun, dun. And as you can see from behind Carmen's head, move over a little bit. It says, you know,
Can it be
can it be
human?
human?
Yes,
So,
because the first murder, it pretty much starts out like bam, woman
mhm.
screaming and somebody's been killed. And so the thing that I liked about the different murders that happened, so this was definitely Hollywood license. There was not just the one murder of the, two
The
ladies.
three, Was it two or three?
Two.
Two.
It's two.
Yeah.
Yeah, two in the apartment or flat. And
Uh-huh.
so it was three different murders, and they all had some type of element pulled from Poe's story. And so
Right.
that's the part I liked. And I think each one of them, they had the mix up of I think he spoke German, I think he was Italian. And so each one of them had a little bit of that, but then they all had other little things that were pulled from the story that they kind of split up to establish the three murders. I thought that was pretty
There
cool.
was four murders.
Let's see. Was it four?
Yes, because the very first one that we don't see the body, but it happens.
Oh, that's right.
Then
Yes,
the
because it
dancer was
pans.
the
Yeah.
second one.
Mm-hmm.
Then the model
Was
for
the
the
third?
artist was the third, and then the victim that we talked about, the
Yes.
the flatmate
Yes.
of Dupine was the fourth one.
Mm-hmm.
So there were four murders, but
That's
only
right.
three of them we actually saw on screen. Like
Right.
you said, the
Yeah.
first one that started it all, which I want to say this, when, okay, we know about movie sets, especially in those times and,
Mm-hmm.
the early days. We all know they have these huge lots of movie sets. But
Right.
when the woman starts screaming and then she's running down the hall, running down the street and yelling, murder, murder, gendarme, gendarme. And then she's looking down the hallways. She's looking in doorways. She's running up, screaming at the top of her lungs. There's not a single person anywhere.
Yeah,
There's
that's true.
nobody on the sidewalk. And then all of a sudden, out jumps this gendarme.
Yes.
And she just yells, murder, murder. And they take off down
Oh,
the hallway, the alleyway. And I'm going, okay, so where are these people? You
yeah.
know,
For it to be in it was I was trying now, hold on. Did they say the setting? I mean, it was in France. It was Paris, right?
yes,
I
it
just
was
assumed
Paris.
because I don't remember them actually saying that, which to me that's a little bit of a flaw unless I just missed it, and I could have.
Well, the carnival, during the carnival, it actually
Right.
said Paris on
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Um, but the very beginning, there was the sign that was on the concrete wall that said Rue Morgue,
Yes, I remember
identifying the
that.
street.
I did see
So,
that. Yes.
and that's where I went, oh my God, she come running from the wrong direction and then ran down the Rue
Oh,
Morgue street. So it's like, where the heck did she come from? If she's taking the gendarme to the murder, they're going in the wrong direction.
maybe she'd already been in the other direction.
I was like, yeah. So, at
Oh,
that point, I did not have high hopes for this movie just from the opening parts. Okay, that's all I gotta say. Because
right.
I'm like, okay, we're already directionally challenged. There's nobody. Now, I will say this: they definitely started using Hitchcock tricks,
Mm-hmm.
because when the woman starts screaming, then you've got the darkness around, but they make sure to sink in right at her face and just show her face in that
Yes.
oval when she's screaming.
Yep.
And I'm going, oh, look, they picked up some tricks from Hitchcock.
Oh, yes. And then the other murders, again, they have a locked room murder
Mm-hmm.
where the body is stuffed up into the chimney, just like from Poe's story.
Yes.
And the one difference and the link between all of them was that all of these female victims had been given these bell, I call them
Bracelet.
bell bracelets. They were
Yeah.
like a bangle kind of gold bracelet, and they had three or four little bells on them. And so I kind of, just knowing the story from Poe and just kind of thinking, okay, I think I know where this is going. It made sense how the killer was using the bracelets. So I thought, even though that had nothing to do with Poe's story, to like link them all together, I thought that was a nice little twist.
Well, it was, but at the same time, it was annoying because they were doing it so badly, is what I'm that's all
Ah,
I can say
ah.
is they were doing it so badly.
So, all right, I want to hear this theory.
All right. So, you know, the whole trick is, and they bring up the point when the inspector goes to visit Dupin in his classroom, and Dupin
Yes.
makes his suggestions about the psychological part, which
Right.
that's one thing, and I'll get back to it in a minute about the inspector.
Okay.
But Dupin makes his psychological things about, he even brings up types of schizophrenia and
Yes.
all this kind of stuff. But then when Moray comes in and
Hmm.
he makes like not really a derogatory, but kind of a shot toward Sigmund Freud,
Oh, yes. Yeah.
because he's talking about how, everybody is on the Freud train kind
Yes.
of thing and the
Yes.
ego. And then the next thing that falls in line is that they're hopping over to the behavioralists.
Yeah.
It's like going from the psychological of Freud into the behaviorist of like B.F. Skinner and
Yeah.
Pavlov. And that's what
Yes.
they started
Yes.
going into. And I'm like, oh my God. Because the moment that I saw Moray and he and his mice,
Hmm.
I knew what they were doing. And I was
Oh,
like,
yeah. Yeah.
really? Are we really going to do this? Because I mean, I can understand. Yes, it was a nice little twist because yes, they still use the psychological that Poe does.
Hmm.
Even though it wasn't as weird as when Bella, not no, it was Karloff, not Lugosi. Uh, when Karloff played, right?
Oh, yeah. From the
No.
original version. Yes.
Yeah, from the original version.
Yes.
Um, so I knew that they were moving it to that end, and I was like, okay, that's okay.
Yeah.
But it was like, really, really, because they made it to where they said that the bracelets, once they put the bracelets on, they couldn't get them off. They
Right.
couldn't take them off. And
Yes.
I'm thinking to myself, huh? Really? Really? Okay. So, you know, let's just tag these women with these expensive jewelry that they can't take off. Who in the right mind makes a bracelet you can't take off? So anyway,
Well, somebody
they
that was a serial killer before serial killer was even a term.
oh, I'm just like, that was just stupid in my opinion. That was just something that kind of didn't, there was no reason, is what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
There was no reason other than he wanted to make sure that they kept it on. But I'm thinking to myself, what does it matter if they take it off or not? Because they're still going to have it. It's still going to make noise. And that's the other thing that bothered me, is because once they got it on, it's like the noise of the bells just annoyed me because
It
it just
it was
noise
noisy. Yeah,
ding
I
ding
I
ding ding.
agree. I agree with the noise aspect of it. Um the other, I guess, plot hole with that too is that, our killer was looking for, the I want to say his love, someone that
Yeah,
was going to accept him, and giving these bracelets to them. And so if one of the women had fallen in love with him, then what are they going to do? Get some, cutters and cut the bracelet off, because obviously he doesn't want the bracelet to stay on for
but
purposes,
here's
you
but
know.
here's the
Oh,
thing. He didn't give them the bracelets until they uh what's the word? shot him down, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was his way of marking his targets, so to
Right.
speak.
Exactly.
But at the same time, I'm like, it, I know where they were going with it, but at the same time, it didn't really fit
Hmm.
with the behavior that was getting what from it, because he wasn't turning this person or this thing or whatever you want to call it, the
Yes.
murderer,
Yes.
wasn't turning them into a murderer with the use of the bell. The bell in behavior, with Skinner and Pavlov and everything,
Hmm.
is that the bell would cause them to react to something that they were going to get. So for him to be able to condition
Hmm.
this murderer, then every time that he used the bell, he would have had to kill somebody.
Right. Or attack.
So, yeah,
Yeah.
or attack. So there
Hmm.
had to be bodies and people everywhere in order for him to make sure that he gets the right outcome, is what I'm saying.
Right. Well, but if you remember when Moray brought Jeanette down and the sailor Jacques was there,
Mm-hmm.
who was the owner of the gorilla. If you
Yeah.
remember, he,
Eight.
yeah, so he had the bracelet, and you remember the gorilla started to attack when it was ringing.
Uh, no, I don't remember that. I know he took out his like his little pocket
Hmm.
watch thing and was hypnotizing the ape. There was not
Right.
a bell.
Yeah, but there was part of there was the bracelet, and the ape was anxious about it.
But yeah, I understand that. But what I'm saying is for him to be able to get the murder result,
Hmm.
it would have had to happen numerous times for him to get that conditioning.
Right, true. Like the practice of it,
Yes,
the conditioned practice.
conditioned
Yes.
response. In order
Yes,
to get that
yes.
conditioned response, it would have had to have, continuously happen.
Over
That's
and
one of the
over.
things with Pavlov, is that he conditioned them that when they heard the bell, they were to get food.
Right, right. Exactly.
So he kept that conditioning. But here's the thing: the ape, when it killed the first female,
Hmm.
they didn't have a bracelet. There was no bell.
Trying to,
That was a random murder, because remember, Jacques, his scarf was torn off and left at the scene.
yeah. No, there was a bracelet. There was a bracelet because that was the two things. It was the scarf and the bracelet. Yeah,
Okay, I don't know if we were, because when the gendarme laid the stuff on there was a bell, but it wasn't a bracelet that I remember. There was the scarf, and then there was other things like a hairbrush and stuff. But this is before, because from what I remember, Moray did not have Jacques and the ape at that point, because Moray said he saved him because the ape had killed the lady.
I'm looking at my notes. No,
Yeah.
they were there. Like, yeah, Murray had all of them there. Let's see. I'm trying to see if I wrote down at the very that first murder.
Oh, wait a minute. There were 5 murders. I forgot about the dressmaker,
That's right. That's right.
because he killed the mannequin. But
Yes.
see, the mannequin didn't have a bell.
Well, no, no.
So anyway, so
Yes.
the movie starts out, it just, has the Hitchcock vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Dupin ends up becoming the inspector's focus because things start showing up at the murder scene that link Dupin to the murders
Exactly.
for a
Yes.
reason, you
Yes.
know, and we won't give that away, but it's
Oh.
the oldest ring and oldest reason in the book, so you can figure it out on your own. Uh, but it's very interesting because the only one that I didn't okay, I understand the first one, the dancer,
Mm-hmm.
because she was a sucker for the educated men, like the students.
Right. Right.
So I knew why she was there,
Yes.
but I never could figure out why the model. How did she get involved? Because they never tied that. So that was like a plot
Whole.
hole for
Mm-hmm.
me.
That's
Is
very true. Yeah, they never did tie that.
yeah, it's like, how did she end up with a bracelet? Because they never tied her. She was not a student.
No.
She wasn't a dancer. She wasn't, she was a model for this artist, but this artist, uh, I don't even know why the artist was even there because he had, I didn't see any ties to anybody else because they didn't show him tied to Dupin or Moray or anybody else. So it was like, in my opinion, I think they threw that in there so they could throw in the circus.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you remember how the killer got in was that there was the
Mhm.
big skylight and
Yes,
in there like this image of like a head, arms, and then body was
yes,
broken, when they
through the windows.
through.
Yeah,
And yes, because then they went to the circus to talk to the trapeze artists. And I agree.
yes,
I think
because
they threw that in just to pull lots of things like that in. Yeah.
think about it. There's in the Karloff one, there
Hmm.
was he was working as in the circus.
Right. Hmm.
And then with this one, Moray actually had his own type of zoo.
Yes.
He was a zoologist, so he had his own
Right.
type of zoo with all the animals.
Yeah.
So I think this was a way because the only way to escape or to get to the skylight, like you said, was to jump off the roof and
Hmm.
trapeze their way across these awnings.
Yeah.
So, but that was the big, like, why in the world kind of moment that I had in the movie. It's
Okay.
like, did we just stick this in here just so you could bring in the trapeze and the circus? Because come on.
Well, and
Because I couldn't figure out they didn't lead up to anything in the script about the inspector describing why he was at the circus. They just showed up.
and I think it kind of moved from that murder and basically that it had to be somebody that was very, acrobatic.
Athletic
Yeah,
and yeah.
athletic, that kind of thing. So, oh, it could be a trapeze artist that did it. And so
Yeah.
I think that I really believe with how many murders that they added into this, again, breaking them up rather than
Mhm.
just having just the two,
Just the two
one,
in the locked room.
yeah,
Yeah.
two for one. I not to be ugly, but yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and breaking it up into like five, I think it was trying to throw the accusations on, how many different types of people the murderer could be, making
Yeah.
the audience guess. And so I just think that, from that era, with the mid 50s when this was made, I think that
Mhm.
was what they were trying to do is make people just keep thinking, oh, wow, yeah, it could be that person or it could be this person.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, it was not. It was interesting, but at the same time, it's like, what? This is just, because let's just keep killing people, and then we'll just change it up. But and the one thing that really bothered me is that, like the dancer's murder.
Hmm.
The first female that was killed that was we actually saw on
Right.
screen.
Yes. Yes.
The blood and everything was only on her lower half.
Yeah.
The upper half of her wasn't bloody, wasn't anything, and her bracelet was still attached and nothing was broken off or anything. And it was like, okay, but everything was destroyed in the room.
Yeah. In every single murder scene, except for, even the first one,
Mhm.
every murder scene was like that. The room was totally destroyed.
Yeah. And they kept, and this is the one thing that they did keep to the stuffed up the chimney,
Yes.
uh, for the poor flatmates of
Right.
Dupin.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons he said, do you honestly think that I have the strength to stuff her up a chimney when it took four gendarmes to get her out?
Yeah. And that was
No.
the locked room mystery. Yes.
Yes, and this was the point when the tide turned for the inspector for me. That
Okay.
it went a little off the rails for
Yeah.
me
Okay.
because I'm like, okay, dude, you were sounding so good, you were following the steps, you were doing all the right thing, and then all of a sudden, what? Okay, first of all, if he was just running from a murder, and like we just said, the rooms were completely destroyed, there
Hmm.
was blood everywhere, there wasn't a drop of blood anywhere on him.
Correct.
The
Yes.
supposed murder, uh, 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 the knife, the murder
Weapon.
weapon.
Hmm.
Okay, I couldn't think of the word for some odd reason. The supposed murder weapon was his blade that he was shaving with, because it did show that scene that he was shaving,
Yes.
that he dropped while he was chasing the murderer across the roof
Right.
when they caught him. It
Hmm.
didn't have a single speck of blood on it.
No, and
And
it was
it was,
closed up. It had his initials, and again, it was just all just trying to accuse him to,
yeah.
yeah.
And that was the point to where I started losing things against the inspector, because I'm like, oh no, 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 no. Okay.
Well,
Anybody that had done that much damage to a room, and there was a locked door, the windows were closed, and he didn't have a speck of blood on him, and they just caught him right after the murder. This wasn't something that happened hours earlier.
no, it was on the scene. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mhm.
So I was like, yeah, that was another plot hole that was the crater, in my opinion.
Well, and one other thing I want to mention too. So before the this lady was killed, they show this man in a suit and a
Oh
hat.
yeah,
He's smoking. He's like watching her go into her flat, and he's just being all very sketchy down, in
yeah,
the dark corners of, the where her apartment building was.
yeah, very stalkerish.
Yes. And so obviously they're again trying to make you think, because we hadn't seen this character before now, before
Yeah,
this point in the movie. And so again, making, okay, who is this? Is he the murderer? And then he shows up and he is Detective Minot, who works for Bernard.
yeah,
And so it's like, you got another, policeman that's trying to help, solve this murder or these murders, I should say. And it's
yeah.
like, it almost was like, to me, he should have been included from the very beginning as kind of like, if you think about. the way Poe wrote the story, you've got, even
Hmm.
though Bernard was the inspector, he was the Dupine detective character, and then
Yes,
Minot kind of would have been the unnamed narrator,
exactly.
but giving him a name, obviously. But he was really out to get Dupine
Oh yes, he was determined that Dupin was the murderer.
guilty. Yeah,
Yeah, and it
absolutely.
was, and it this was another kind of a play that they like to make to where they always make one person so determined and so tunnel visioned that they're
Yes,
determined to hang it on one person.
right. And make it
Uh,
and make the evidence fit that to that person rather than looking at the person and can this person have been did they have an alibi,
mhm.
did are there fingerprints, are there all these things that fit, blood on the shaving knife,
Exactly.
razor.
And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that kind of bothered me the most is with Poe's Dupin story, the very first, Murder in the Rue Morgue, he used it as his way of introducing forensics.
Right, right.
He tried to make it as a way to talk about forensics and introduce it into the line of investigation. And
Hmm.
that's one of the things that bothered me because they tried that at the very beginning with the inspector,
Yes, they did.
you know,
Yes.
by by bringing up the like they had different types of ears.
Yes, and
And
I was really impressed by that, but
yeah,
then the consistency of the forensics going through was lacking.
yeah, because it just stopped. It
Yeah.
just started. It's like the writing started off really well, that they had this parallel that they were working towards a main goal, and then
Hmm.
it's like halfway through it just started falling apart.
Yeah.
The story arc was, fading. They
They
couldn't
put
stick
too
anything
much,
together. Yeah.
they put
And
too much into it.
yeah, and they could have kept it, but they tried to do too much.
Yeah.
And that was just, it started breaking the story down for me in a bad way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just veered off from the Poe world, and I really got irritated with that to where it's like, this was Poe's breakout for, being the father of the detective, and all of a sudden you're ruining it. And that was the
Mhm.
one thing that bothered me. It's like you started off well, but why? Why? And I really, the character of Moray, I will say that I really enjoyed that character for the most part because he was a little, he was definitely over the top and he played the perfect psychopath.
Oh, absolutely. He absolutely did. And then later, kidnapping the main leading lady
Mhm.
and her realizing that he's been lying to her about why he wanted to his wife how his wife died, and
Yeah,
how she didn't want to leave, and realized that the bars on the window, he put them there to keep her in, not to protect her.
exactly. Now I did that one point in the classroom, the the one lecture series where he has the lady there and he's talking about how her husband did her wrong and she became a mute.
Oh,
But when
yes.
she's under hypnosis, she can talk and speak,
Hmm.
hear and speak and everything, has no problems whatsoever. And he's,
Yeah.
talking about the psychological. But what I really enjoyed about it was that her name was Marie.
Yes.
So it was like, boom, we're tying in the next episode with the murder of Marie Roget or the,
Exactly. Well, and two, thinking about, even though, because hypnotism is kind of it came out of mesmerism, and so you
Yes.
got a lot of those aspects from other Poe stories too. So yeah,
Yeah.
I liked some of those little, hints of,
Nuances. Yeah.
yes, of other Poe stories, which many of the movies that we've looked at have had that, and I really like it when they do that.
Yeah. And I liked this one because they were very seldom.
Yeah,
They didn't inundate you to where it's like they keep slapping you in the face with different ones to where it's like you're doing a disservice to Poe's stories.
right. Yeah, yeah, like have Moray did not have a dungeon with, pit and pendulum.
Right.
Just
It's like,
pits.
really? Yeah. No, that
Oh.
was just bad.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, well yeah, we won't
so
we won't go back there. But one of the other
yeah,
things I
no.
want to mention too is that, when we were looking at the list and coming up with, with this next movie, The Phantom of the Rue Morgue, and it's like, okay, my husband Jeff asked me, what movie are y'all going to talk about tonight? And I told him, and he goes, is that like Phantom of the Opera mixed with Murders in the Rue Morgue? I said, no. I said, but going into it, I wondered if there was going to be some kind
Yeah,
of element of that. But the reason why they call the killer the Phantom, because leading up to until you find out, definitively who the murderer is, it it's just a shadow either on the rooftops or the alleyways. You just see this shadowy, like literally a shadow of someone walking through these areas.
yeah. And it fits perfectly because everybody that sees it sees something differently.
Yeah.
And what really got me, and this is okay, because you remember from Poe's story, the witnesses all
Yes.
say that they heard someone speaking, but it was a different language,
Language. Yeah.
like Italian, Spanish, German, all that. They did stick with that,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I'm going, nobody said anything,
No.
except screaming. So how could you hear somebody speaking? Nobody was talking. It was just screaming and grunting. So it's like, really?
Well, but if you think about it, in Poe's story, the ladies would have been screaming and
Yes.
probably screaming out words or things like that.
Oh,
But
yeah.
the orangutan, how I like to say it,
Orangutan.
um,
Yes.
he obviously would have been, screaming and, making noises and things like that. And so I think it's the brain's rationalization of it has to be somebody that's human, and just thinking, okay, what are these grunts and screams? What language could it have been? It's like
Yeah.
fantastical when you think about it.
Yeah. But at the same time, it was like, I could understand it with the orangutan,
Yeah.
you know, but those animals, an ape and an orangutan, even though they're both in the ape universe,
Hmm.
they have different sounds.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So that was kind of where I was like, yeah, okay. That's pushing it a little bit, but all right.
Ooh. But yeah, we do get, an ending of, the killer being revealed and taken care of. And if we don't want to spoil it, we don't want to say how it ended.
Right.
But
It is resolved. Let's
it
just put
is,
it that way.
yes, yes,
Everything is resolved. Even the weirdest of them all is resolved. The
yeah,
one thing I will say that I did not like, I mean, yes, there's a lot more killing
right,
in this one,
yeah,
but when animals, especially cats, the lion, when the gendarmes, that Moray releases a lion to distract them so he could try to get away,
I think I know where you're going.
and they shoot and kill the lion. I was like, nope, that that's just wrong.
Well,
No.
I thought you would bring that up, but also too, do you remember they showed, the lion being released?
Uh-huh.
Then later, when there was like some chaoticness going on in the zoo and they're chasing, and everything, they
Oh
show
yeah.
the leopard again. They show the lion in the cage again after the lion had died.
Oh yeah.
It was a
It was a
consistency
repeat.
error.
Yes.
Yes. I was like, why did that have to happen?
Yeah, because I was like, dude, did you not remember? And this is the thing that most people don't realize, is that most of the time when a film is being shot, they don't shoot it in order.
Right,
They
exactly.
don't shoot the scenes in order.
Yeah.
So it could have just been one of those mistakes. But then I was like, maybe they're playing it off that he had two lions.
That's kind of what I thought, but it was the exact same cut of film, which,
Exactly. And I was like, one, I was upset that they killed the lion, which I knew
yes,
that's where it was going to go
I did
when he
too.
released the lion. But
Yeah.
my thing was, is the lion should have went after Moray instead of trying
Yes.
to run away. And that's usually what would have happened, which I thought, well, that's another plot crap that they
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. I
Oh,
agree.
but it was it was the closest to paying homage to Poe's Murders in the Rue Morgue
Mm-hmm.
so far, except for the Karloff one. Karloff, no, yeah, was it? Yeah, Boris. That one,
You mean
well,
Lugosi?
kind of, yeah.
Lugosi. Lugosi.
Was it Lugosi?
It was
I thought it was
Lugosi.
Karloff.
Yeah. It was
Okay.
Lugosi.
Why I always get them mixed up? Anyway, so Lugosi, yeah, vampire. I just call him Dracula. Let's just call him Dracula.
Okay.
Uh, Now that one, it stuck almost, almost to the plot, the plot and the thing when it, sticking in Paris with the setting and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but it kept with the murder, that the only the two murders and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And
But
see,
this one, I think this one is the one where the writers truly wanted to expand and show homage to Poe
mm-hmm.
by making it more and giving. But here's the thing, I mean, instead of making Dupin the detective, they made him out to be the criminal, which I
Right.
was like, me.
Yeah. Because,
If they had done it better, I probably would have, probably wouldn't have backed them on it. But they
mhm.
made it really. I know why they did it, because I know why they did the storyline. They were making it the oldest storyline in the book, but
Mm-hmm.
they just didn't do. It fell apart. They didn't do a
Yeah.
good job with it.
But really, Dupin solved the thing anyway. Even
Yeah,
though he
and
wasn't a
that's the one thing they
true
kept it.
detective. Yeah.
Yeah, because Dupin ended up being the one to solve the case, which
Mhm.
that kept with the story, so that was good.
Yeah. Well, and I will say too, like, I do like the original Murders in the Rue Morgue with I can't remember the main actor's name, Leon Ames
Yeah,
and Bela Lugosi. uh the whole reason why I forget Bela Lugosi's name in there, but in his character name, but the reason why he was doing it was weird, but it like the setup of the whole murder scene was very true to Poe. But I also like the 1986 version with George C. Scott, with how that one was laid out very close to Poe's as well. And they just threw
yeah.
in the love interest part that was way off the whole. It was not on a side street. It was definitely on a detour, you know.
It
But
was on a perpendicular. Woohoo! Okay.
yes, yes, but I do like that version as well. And Val
Yeah.
Kilmer was in it and paying homage to him since he
Yes.
just passed away.
Yes. So we'll probably get to that one when we get to the 80s.
Oh
So
yeah. Yeah. In a couple years.
yeah, we're just now in 1954, so it'll be a while.
Oh yes. Oh yes. So, all right, Jeannie, it's your turn to go first with the Raven Calls and Black Cat Hisses.
Okay. Well, I'll have to say I'm gonna go with three and a half
Ooh,
Raven Calls.
okay.
It would have been four, except too many plot holes.
Okay.
And they really had me in because the different aspects that they did with like the Alfred Hitchcock moments,
Hmm.
the use of the forensics when they did it correctly,
Yeah.
the use of the behavioral conditioning, and the storyline. Like I said, the storyline started out well, and it was really good, and it was actually an interesting storyline.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just fell apart.
Hmm.
So that's why it's only three and a half.
Okay. All right.
So with the black guy hisses, I'm going to go two and a half
Okay.
because it almost made it to three if they hadn't have redeemed themselves in certain aspects of it. It would have been, but it was still two and a half because it's kind of wobbly, and they had too many times that they could have fixed it, but they didn't.
Okay.
And I think if they could have fixed some of the problems and glossed it over, or like the whole one about the model, how the
Yeah.
model and that whole thing, if they had tied it in and actually made it part of the story instead of just slapping it in there like an afterthought,
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I would have been as safe to had no black cat hisses if they could have fixed a few things.
Yeah.
So, but
That's saying a lot. Yeah.
yeah. So it's they're getting closer to keeping it Poe.
Yes.
So, but
Okay.
I'll have to say it kept me entertained. And I did want to say this, that the dance scene, now not the knife throwing thing, because those weren't knives, those were like rapiers. I mean,
Yes.
they were way too long for
Oh, yeah.
eppies that you use for fencing. I'm like, nobody's going to be throwing that long because they would not be that accurate. But
Yeah.
anyway, so but the scene in this that starts out with the whole dancing and everything, the first thing that popped in my head was Seven Brides for Seven Brothers,
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
because just the whole and McClintock,
Oh,
the
yeah.
John
Hmm.
Wayne and stuff,
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
was like, yep, that's right in that era.
Yeah,
So
it is. It totally is. That makes perfect sense. So
yeah,
now now we need a musical version of Murders in the Rue Morgue. Now that you're bringing
that's right.
this up,
See, that's what I'm saying.
Dupin, the dancing detective.
Exactly. He will solve the case on the two step.
Oh my gosh. Two steps.
Exactly. Was in two steps.
Oh,
Okay.
all right. I guess we need to write it. All right. So, okay.
Yes.
Anything else before my cats and
Nope. I think
ravens?
I've covered everything that
Okay.
I thought. So yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go with probably, I'm trying to decide. I'm going to go ahead and go with Four Ravens. I
Okay.
really did like this movie. It kept me engaged. I kind of like whenever I watch our films that we review each month, I always like have my notepad to take notes, and my phone's near me if I want to pause it, look something up. And this is one that I didn't grab my phone because I was bored. And so I really paid attention the whole time. And I think part of that is I did like the actors that were cast. I think the casting was superb. Um, I did like, the costumes, the settings. I liked that they did pull out all the elements from Poe's story and they wove them in, even though they did it within the different murders. But it really was very nicely, I thought that part was nicely done, paying homage to Poe.
Mm-hmm.
Like you, I liked the forensics at the very beginning. It made me excited that maybe they were going to really add more forensics into the movie. And then, with the Black Cat Hisses, once I get into that, yes, that did fall apart, and that was disappointing because it was like I had high hopes for that. But even though Dupine wasn't playing a detective, I really liked his character. I think Steve Forrest did an excellent job. Carl Malden did an excellent job. Again, just going back to the acting. So just it was a good, fun 1950s film, to
Yeah.
watch. Where the things that I don't like, so for Black Cat Hisses, I'm going to actually go with two because, again, the cinematography wasn't as good as it could have been with some of the, like, the whole showing the cat more than once. That was
Mm-hmm.
just a minor thing, but I think that they had way too many murders and kind of, I think them adding in, kind of like we talked about, them having, the artist and
Mm-hmm.
flatmate and the knife throwers magic lady or whatever you want to call her. It was like if they had maybe taken one or two of them out and stuck with the last one, which really was the locked room mystery part of Murders in the Rue Morgue from Poe, they could have delved into that a little bit more. And I think it would have been, the continuity would have been a whole lot better doing that.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I was disappointed in that as well. And I think the ending was rushed, and
Mm-hmm.
I think what we found from a lot of these movies that we've watched, I think it was the last one or the one before, it was like the ending part lasted like 30 seconds. Like, the
Mm-hmm.
killer was killed and it was like done in the end. And
Yeah, it's like they ran out of time and money. The
yeah,
budget said, wrap it up,
yeah.
wrap it.
But I will say that the ending was the way it should have been.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't want to give it away, but how the killer dies and, all of that was justice, you know.
Yeah, but I do want to say that very interesting at the ending is one of the things that pops in at the very end that all of a sudden they have. It's like, where did they get that?
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of those props that you're going, what the, you know, the, huh? It's like,
Yeah.
where did this come from? You came, in a horse-drawn carriage, and this is you didn't have anyway. It's like, where, where?
Yeah.
So yes, it was very rushed. It was one of those things to where it says, "All right, we got to wrap this up. Cut. We're done."
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. But then there was a nice little homage to Poe at the very end too. So,
Yes.
yeah, and
Yes,
we'll
there
we'll
is.
we'll keep that a secret. So,
Yes, you'll have to
yes.
watch it to find out.
Yes. So anyway, so that's my,
That's your caw take.
yes.
That's your cat hiss. That's
Yes.
your caw. That's
My call
your
take.
caw hiss. Your caw hiss.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they're getting better. That's one thing I want to just say is the movies are getting better.
Yeah,
And then
and
in a few, oh, I think it's the next one. Yes, I think it's our next one that we start into
no,
the world. No,
no, we're
isn't it?
remember we've got one more that is technically not a post story, but we're gonna
Ah,
pull
that's right. That we're
one that
ending
we
the
feel like
season
we,
with. Yeah.
yes, we need to, because it's more of biographical, that we need to
Yeah.
do before we move into season 5 with what you were about to say.
Yes. So to wrap up our season 4, which is our first season of Review Morgue,
Yes.
we decide we would actually do a movie kind of biopic
Mm-hmm.
of Mr. Poe
Yes.
and his love.
Yes. The Loves of Poe.
Yes. So we're gonna wrap the season with that one.
And I think,
So
what year was that, Jeannie? Was it 40 or 38?
hold on. I've got it right here.
I can't remember.
Got it right here. Hold on.
All right.
It is 1942.
Okay. All right. I was close.
Yes. And here's the little synopsis for everybody, just so you know.
All right.
Edgar Allan Poe led an unhappy childhood, broken only by the unceasing devotion of his foster mother, Mrs. Frances Allen, whose loving ministrations gave him courage to carry out his desire to write. His first love was Elmira Royster, and though she married another, while he was at the University of Virginia, he could never purge his thoughts of her, and under the influence of her spell, he poured out the deepest passions of his heart. Then it talks about after a discouraging period in his life and his foster father, he found the love that tamed his restless heart with Virginia Clem.
All
And then
right.
after Virginia Clem and he married, the writing for the Southern Literary Messenger became his creative work. And so it goes from there. So yeah, that's pretty
Okay.
much what the summary of is.
All right. Yes. So that will be our July's Review Morgue before we get
Yes.
into season 5, which starts in August. Do we want to go ahead
Yes.
and tell our viewers and listeners
No.
what? Okay.
We
Yeah.
want to save that for our last episode of the season, so we can get everybody pumped up and
And
ready to go the
excited.
next season.
Poe excited.
Yes, Poseidon. We
Excited.
Poseidon. Yeah, we pump up with
Oh,
Poseidon.
oh my.
Poseidon. 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 Okay, I'm stuck.
Okay.
It's like
Yeah.
a record. I got stuck.
Yeah.
Anyway, it was like a tongue twister. It just like latched. But
Oh,
anyway.
yes. Yes.
So, but for anyone, just remember you can find us on all major platforms. You can
Yes.
find us on X, Instagram. We are on the Facebook.
Yes.
Uh, and don't forget that July 1st, we will be announcing our Poetry
Yes. Yeah.
Winners.
Winners. Yes.
It's really 97 degrees here, so I'm thinking of winter to stay cool.
Yes. And
And
you
go
go ahead.
ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
Oh,
I
well,
was just going to say, and you can catch us on YouTube
yes, that's what I
on
was going to say.
Poe Unplugged
Subscribe.
3978.
Subscribe.
Yes, please subscribe to our channel. And tomorrow, or whenever it was posted, Tuesday, June 25th, will be
Fourth.
our Poe and
Fourth. 24th.
4th. See, I don't even know what day it is, much less what the date is.
Yes,
So,
tomorrow, which is June 24th at 7 p.m.
exactly.
Central, we will be discussing William Wilson on Poe Unplugged. You still may go to one of our socials and register, or actually just go straight to our website, the 6degreesofpoe.com, and register, and we will send you the link for Zoom tomorrow morning.
And you can join us and we can talk about the story of William Wilson. Hey, I said it right.
Yes, you did.
Now, tomorrow night might be a different story, so, I might end up saying Woodrow Wilson 1,000 times. Who knows?
Yes, that's what she's been doing, and it's like,
Yes,
no,
can't
Jeannie,
help it.
it's William Wilson.
William Wilson. William. Maybe I should talk in the Dracula. William Wilson. Okay.
Oh Lord. Okay. On
Just
that
saying.
note, I think we are.
Oh.